everybody. I'm Amy.
Hi, this is Audrea.
And this is The Right Crowd. So grab a cup of coffee.
Or a cup of tea.
Maybe a little something on the rocks. And let's get started. Okay, so this week we are discussing, again, Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Weiland.
Da, 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 da.
We are walking through parts 2 and 3, which are flat arc and negative arc.
Yes.
The cool thing about the way she does it is that all the were in part 1. Like, these are all the plot points that you should have. All the basics were in part 1. Parts 2 and 3 for a positive character arc. Parts 2 and 3, she basically just tells you not all the basics again, but she tells you how these are different from the positive character arc. And this is the part when we get to the negative that made me I started thinking of characters I could write about that were bad guys that stayed bad guys. And yet, as I say that, I think of Hannibal, where he was a bad guy, but yet he ended up being an ally if you were really paying attention.
Yes.
So yeah. Okay. So part 2, the flat arc. And she breaks it down just like she did the positive arc. She starts with the first act and she goes through and tells you how it's different. And then, like, it's the truth, the lie, the normal, the characteristic moment, the first act, the second act, the first half of she does the whole thing all over again. Mm-hmm. But she makes it specific. So a flat character arc is a character who do not change. Character.
If your character do not change, then that is a flat arc, y'all.
Correct.
That'd be a flat arc.
So it's a character that does not change. He already has the truth figured out in the beginning of the story, and he uses that truth to help him overcome various external tests. And she also points out that the flat arc protagonist will be confronted with tremendous opposition. At times he could be shaken, but it doesn't change who he is at his core. Everything else around him changes.
Yes. And she says that the character, she suggests you write out the truth your character believes, and that write it out in different ways. That's one of the exercises she gives you, because that truth that your character believes at the beginning of your story is the truth that they will use to handle the various challenges that they encounter throughout this story, in this type of flat arc story.
And the difference in a flat arc and a positive arc is that your characteristic moment isn't going to be about introducing his lie. It's going to be about introducing his truth. So what's the truth that he's hanging on to?
Yes. And what's cool is, and as you guys know, so as you all know, Amy has the actual book and I have the workbook, although I have the actual book on Kindle. One of the cool things about the workbook, in addition to all of the blanks that you can fill out, and I don't have all mine, I always work on in a notebook, in one of my traveler's notebooks, but you get this really cool diagram that you can follow along with for the flat arc in the workbook. And it tells you where the first act is, the second act is, the third act is. I paid not more attention, but I was particularly interested in the flat arc because all of my favorite stories, or the stories I read the most of, are series or flat arc characters, because I like flat arcs more. I like flat arcs are represented in more stories like your Jack Reachers. Jack Reacher is always going to be the same. The world around Jack Reacher changes because Jack Reacher changes the world. He roots out corruption and does things, but Jack Reacher doesn't really change. And so I like stories like that a little bit more. So I was particularly interested in the points she made about the flat arc. And then one of the other things she says that I kind of liked, I highlighted, is a flat arc will never be a story about a character's search for closure, which I thought was funny. I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, that is. And the other thing she points out is that he may have a ghost, but he's already come to terms with it. Like he's not developing in any way because of a realization that's coming. He's already come to terms with it. You can point out his ghost if you want to, but it's not anything that's going to change him. He's already dealt with it.
I really liked her example that she used for Thor. We heard that in the positive arc in part 1 of the book. In part 2, when she's talking about the flat arc, she uses Thor again. She says in Marvel's canon, the first movie in the Thor series, it has a positive arc. You see Thor change. Thor comes back in another movie. He doesn't have a positive arc again because he's already made his changes. However, Thor now has made his changes, but he's changing the world around him. And I love that as a great example of what you can do with a series. You've had a character make a positive arc, and now he has his truth. He knows his truth, and he can use his truth to change the world.
Yep. And her examples that she uses during the flat arc chapters are the Hunger Games, because it's about the society. It's not necessarily about Katniss. It's about the society. Chicken Run, The Last of the Mohicans. I want to give you guys the examples so that you can see it's not just detective series. Like it covers like all these different things. Gladiator, Sense and Sensibility. What?
And me, I wish it was always detective series.
Yes, and tell me you don't love some Gladiator.
Oh gosh, yes, but
like all of these movies, let me finish. Sense and Sensibility, Captain America, True Grit, and Batman Begins. I mean, all of those are great movies where I had never thought about the fact that it wasn't the character that changed. Like it wasn't like it stayed like this, but yet it was still entertaining.
Yes. Excellent examples.
Let's see.
I really like what she does with the characteristic moment, because she says the characteristic moment is the same in all of the different types, all 3 of the types of arc. But the difference in a flat arc is that the characteristic moment must be used to introduce the truth instead of the lie, which is interesting. And it made me really think about like all of those examples, how they use the characteristic moment in Batman to show like what Batman is about. And in Chicken Run, I love Chicken Run. Chicken Run is such a good movie.
In my early 20s, I was a nanny for a family who had a son that was autistic. Mm-hmm. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen Chicken Run and all things Wallace and Gromit.
Oh, Wallace and Gromit.
He totally got British humor.
Oh.
And oh my gosh, he would be laughing at the scene before it even come up because he knew it was coming. All things Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run, I've seen them a gazillion times. And yes, it was fabulous. Okay, and again, she's got the questions at the end of the chapters. And then, so that was the first act. And in the second act, she goes through and again tells you how it's different from the positive arc. She doesn't go through all the basics. She just tells you how your second act is going to be different with a flat arc than it was with a positive arc. Is there anything anything in specific? Okay, that was not even a word. Anything specifically, I don't even know how I came up with that other word, that you wanted to point out in this chapter?
Well, I just wanted to say that if you are a writer who's writing a series or you're writing a flat arc, don't skip the first part. Don't skip the positive arc stuff to go straight to the flat arc or straight to the negative arc, do read that first positive arc just so you can use it to inform what you're doing with your flat arc characters and build on, because that's what you're going to use that information to help you with your flat arc characters or negative arc.
Yeah, she refers back all the time.
Mhm.
So it's hard for you to understand what's going on if you don't know what she's referring back to. So yeah, make sure you pay attention to that.
Yeah. And one of the questions that she has is one that I highlighted that I ask myself repeatedly throughout my book is like, what truth does your character already believe at the beginning of the story? And that's the truth that at every crucial point in the book, I have to remember what that truth is. And that's the truth that drives her forward every time she hits an impasse or a negative moment. Every time she hits a crucial moment in the book, I have to remember what is that truth that she already believes at the beginning of the story that's going to drive her forward in the book.
And one of the things that K.M. Weiland points out is that it's not that you're introducing the truth to the protagonist. The protagonist is introducing the truth to the world around him.
Yes, which is cool. And I love reading characters like this. And one of the other things about why I love these types of stories is one of the other things that I highlighted is a flat arc offers the opportunity for you to create a competent, committed protagonist who can transform the world around them. And I love reading those characters, whether it's a strong woman or, just, a Jack Reacher or a kick butt accountant, whoever it is. I just love reading about characters like that who, can transform the world with whatever.
That was a good movie, by the way. That was a good movie.
That was a good movie.
As soon as you said that, I don't remember the name of the movie, but I remember a scene in the movie where the guy's like, I thought you were an accountant, after he killed the guy with his bare hands. Yeah. Okay.
I actually think the name of the movie is The Accountant.
Is it called The Accountant?
Yeah. And we'll put it in the show notes, people.
It's good. Okay.
All right. So
I think you could it's also good for books about little kids.
Oh yeah.
Or if your main character is like a dog. You know what I mean? A dog isn't going to change that much through the process of a book. However, the dog's behavior could change the world around them.
Yes.
So it would be good for that kind of thing. And again, she goes through her examples of her stories and then gives you, so we said in the last video that the chapters aren't very long. Mm-hmm. So chapter 16, where it talks about the second act for the flat arc, before she starts going over the stories and how it works in them, is 2 pages long, front and back. And then she has 2 pages of breaking it down. And then this is my point. She has so much information in there and how it's going to develop your story. There are 14 questions to go through for your story for the second act for a flat arc to make sure you're getting it right. With 2 pages of information, she's got 14 questions. So even though you pick it up and you're like, there's not a lot of information in here, there's so much more information in there than you realize. So some people are like, oh, that's a lot of white space. I don't want that much white space. The white space is good. It's a lot of information. Don't let it throw you.
Yes.
Yeah. And something, this is another, remember I told you she does these quotes in between? Here's another quote for life. This is not one that I have heard. However, it's really good. The truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it.
Ooh, that's deep.
And I think that goes right along with the flat arc character.
Yeah. Whether
you like his truth or not, it doesn't matter. It's his truth. Mm-hmm. And that's like Batman. The Joker's not going to like it, but that's too bad. It's not changing just because the Joker doesn't like it. So, and I think in life, it could also be very true as well. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah.
So,
or even Spider-Man's truth. With great power comes great responsibility. We know that truth. I mean, after the first, his first story where he comes to be and he loses his uncle, from that point forward, it's with great truth or great power comes great responsibility. That informs the rest of his story.
The whole canon for Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, and then she goes into the third act, and goes into your plot point. Again, tells you your percentage mark to where everything should be. And in this third act, like in the first part, each thing had its own chapter. So in this section, because she's just telling you how it's different, the third plot point, the third act, the climax, the resolution, it's all in this one chapter. Like they don't have their own individual sections. But she goes through how it's different for the flat arc compared to the positive arc.
And in this, and throughout the whole book, but especially in this chapter, in this section, she talks about how a flat arc doesn't have to demonstrate deep themes. And I really like that. She says that every flat arc will present a protagonist whose views are opposed to the antagonist-influenced worlds, but those views may not be deep moral issues. And she says that flat arcs of this type are popular in action stories. That's why you'll see flat arcs in like Batman, or you'll see flat arcs in a lot of the Mission Impossible movies and things of that nature. And she says, sometimes the truth can be as simple as the evergreen, the bad guy will destroy the world if he isn't stopped. So you can apply creating character arcs, whether or not you're writing literature or commercial fiction, all of this, the character arc applies throughout, no matter what kind of fiction you're writing.
Right. The other thing that she points out, and I think this is going to be across the board, is that if a supporting character's final declaration of the truth is the key to winning the conflict, then he becomes, in essence, the primary character. So make sure that the person who is the key to finding the truth and revealing the truth, make sure that's your protagonist. Because if it's a supporting character that does that, he's not a supporting character. He's the main character. So she does point that out in this section. And that is that for part 2. Anything else you want to point out?
Nope.
Cool. Part 3, the negative change arc. This is the one I've been waiting for. And I don't know why I loved it so much, but I did. And I think her quote at the beginning of this one goes really well with the negative change arc. Lying to ourselves is more deeply ingrained than lying to others. How true is that? And you know what? And if you think about it, it's like, say you and I are discussing a problem that you're having, and I'm trying to help you with that problem, but I have the same problem. I'm able to help you with your problem and tell you how you can see the other side of it, but it's too big of a problem for me to figure out. Like, I can't fix my problem. And I think that's kind of how this goes, right? You have a negative change arc character who is so deeply sold on it that they can't see the roses from the thorn bushes, kind of thing.
Right.
And again, she breaks it down just like she did flat arc. She goes through all the different acts and pieces and how they're different from a positive arc and a flat arc into a negative. She also, there's, is this the one where there's multiple versions of a negative arc?
Yes. Yes.
which I hadn't even,
Me
you know,
either.
honestly, I don't know if I've ever thought about a negative arc character. Like, I don't think I've ever like even put it together, but it so makes sense.
Yep. As soon as I read how she broke it down, it made perfect sense. There's the, she breaks it into the disillusionment arc. So they don't go from a negative to a positive, obviously. They don't just go from a positive to a negative, but they go from the character believes a lie, overcomes the lie, but the new truth is tragic. I don't like it. It's, so, and her example of that is the Great Gatsby. And, you know, he has truth now. He's no longer, his rose-colored glasses come off. He's no longer in love with that life of the shining rich people. But, ugh, sad. It's still sad. And then there's the fall arc where the character believes the lie, they cling to the lie, reject the new truth, and then they wind up believing a stronger, worse lie. And her example for that one is Wuthering Heights and doubt. And I don't know if I know doubt.
I
don't know if I'm familiar with doubt. But everybody's, I mean, well, Wuthering Heights is a classic, of course.
Yeah. And then the third one is the corruption arc.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's where the character sees the truth, rejects the truth, and embraces the lie. And I think her examples for this are perfect. And it's The Godfather and Star Wars episodes 1 to 3. I think they're great examples of this. And she points out that this is perhaps the most moving of all the arcs, since it features a character who is good, or at least has great potential for goodness, but throws that away and consciously chooses darkness.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that it's absolutely true.
When they consciously choose darkness. Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah. Let's see. And then she breaks it down to, she goes over what the normal world looks like for each of those 3 different arcs. Mm-hmm. Like the disillusion, they start out only seeing the glitter and glamour.
Yeah.
The fall arc, they're already entrenched by the lie and they're comfortable and apathetic. And then the corruption is they start out in a comparatively wonderful world, mm-hmm. but then that goes away because they're they choose to not continue in that.
Like The Godfather. Yeah.
Yeah. The characteristic moment, it hints at the character's potential, especially as it pertains to the lie. But your readers still need to gain an almost immediate sense of the dark nature that will lead to his doomed life, his doomed future. So even though you see it, there has to be something there that helps you see that it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go.
So you said when you were reading about the negative change arc, it made you want to write one of these.
Yeah. And I have that on the end of chapter 18 is where I wrote that, and I even put stars on my page.
Oh.
So this is what I said. Not I said, this is what I highlighted. A well-crafted negative change arc provides readers with a protagonist who reveals interesting truths about the world and about readers themselves. They're rarely comfortable, but they're important. We resonate with characters who follow the lie and pay for it because it is a cycle we repeat so often in our own lives. They can present sober realities that inspire great change in the world around us.
Interesting. I wonder,
So
now that I think about that, is Sopranos would be an example of this negative arc too, wouldn't it? It's almost a negative flat.
I'm not as familiar with Sopranos.
I'll have to give this more thought. I'm sorry I interrupted. Go on. So what were
No,
you
you
saying?
didn't interrupt. I think for me, it's about, could I develop a character in a story that when people put the book down, it gives them something to think about, even though it's complete fiction. Like, it gives them something to think about where they realize that own thing in their life, and it inspires them to make a change. Even though it's not a book about how to better yourself, in the end, it becomes a book about how to better themselves without them even realizing it. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, that sounds intriguing. Intriguing. Very cool.
And then she goes through again, the second act breaks it down through all the different arcs of the negative arc. And again, I like this whole concept of negative arc and then the different arcs within the arc. I never even thought about, or like, it never dawned on me that that's what was happening in the stories. So it was eye-opening for me.
It really was. Reading this certainly was an education, and not just character arcs, but how to interpret film and books again. Thanks a lot, KM Weiland, for making me have to rewatch and reread some of these books. Hey, I just want to ask, for those of you who are reading along or watching this, if you can think of other examples of negative arc books, can you put those in the comments below? Because I am looking for other examples of well done negative arcs. So just comment below with examples of other books, fiction, so I can read them. And even if it's short stories, that'd be great. Thanks.
I was going to say, you're welcome. And then I was like, she's not talking to me. So I'm just going to sit here. Oh my goodness. We are a mess. One of the things that she points out is that in a negative character arc, they're clearly given the opportunity for the truth and the opportunity to follow it. They choose not to. Whenever the character's lie is at the beginning, this is part of the disillusion. Whatever the character's lie in the beginning, he will now begin growing into its worst manifestation.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think, and I like how she at the very end of this chapter, actually, this might be the end of this part. No, one more. She said that the second act is the heart of the negative change arc. And if you write a killer second act, your negative arc change arc will rock readers' worlds.
I can see how that would happen. Yeah, it just makes me want to read more of the negative art.
And it makes me think, I can't think of specifics, but I remember when, like, watching a movie or watching a TV show and someone would do something stupid and you're like, oh my gosh, why did you do that? It's because it was a negative character arc. They were supposed to do it. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't supposed to choose the better path. They were supposed to choose that one because that's, you know, their character.
Same thing.
What's sad is when it happens in real life.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, dude, really?
Yeah.
That was your best option. So, but we're not going to talk about that. Okay.
Same thing when I'm watching a movie and they choose the bad path. You're watching like, oh no, don't choose that path. You're going down the wrong path. Make better choices, and they're making not the better choices. And one of the questions that she has for the second act is, and these are the exercises that she has. but I highlighted a couple of these because they just made me think, is if you're writing a fall arc, how is your character suffering for his devotion to the lie? And I thought that was a great question to ask if you were writing, to think about for your villain. Like, your villain has to be devoted to the lie. And so that would be a great question to ask about your villain.
That's like characters who, like a corrupt detective, right? He chooses to continue to take money under the table, knowing that it could ruin his career. He could lose his family. He makes the wrong guy dead, the wrong guy mad. He's dead. Like, it's like the it wasn't Jack Reacher. What was the movie where is it Denzel Washington? Now I've got to remember. Yes, Denzel Washington in the
Training Day, because she mentions
No.
Training Day in this.
No. He's a good guy who used to kill people, and his wife died, and he promised her that he would stop doing it. And he ends up tangling with the Russian mob because they oh dang, what's her name?
I don't know.
It starts with an E, and it's not the Expendables. He's not in the Expendables. The Equalizer. Oh my gosh. Like, the cop in that movie, like, he could have made a better choice so many times.
Oh yeah.
Many times. But his specific arc was, he was determined to,
tragic.
like,
yes.
I mean, even I remember the point in the movie where he's hiding out in his apartment, his house, and he's hiding out and he's hiding behind curtains, and a car alarm goes off, and I literally remember thinking, dude, you should have made, there's so many other choices you could have made, and yet this is still the better choice, hiding out in your house.
Exactly.
What is so funny? What did I do?
Nothing. I was just wondering if you're going to wind up cutting out this part of the video.
I might cut out well, now I am, because we're talking about it.
Well, you can keep it in though. This is good. This is like behind the scenes stuff. No,
I should.
I think you're right though, because he could, every step of the way, he could have made another choice, but he had a negative arc. So he was following a negative arc, and Denzel Washington's character was following a flat arc. He knew a truth. He was steadfast with his truth, and so he did not waver. The other guy had a negative arc, and it was a fall. He was destined to fall. And
he had so many opportunities.
Yeah.
So many opportunities.
Oh my gosh. And it's those movies and those, when you're reading those books, it's like, oh my gosh, if you just turn the other way, if you just a little bit, if you just make another choice. And it's like when you send your kids off. I don't have kids, but when I hear people say, make better choices, make good choices when you send your kids off to school.
Sometimes I feel like I should say that to my husband when he leaves for the day. Make good choices, honey.
No, you're gonna get to the school in that day, like, should I do this or should I? Mom said to make good choices.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if only your characters would, but if they, you're writing a book, and so sometimes you have to write that the character makes bad choices because that's their arc.
Yeah, and he needed to continue to make those bad choices in order for the Equalizer to be able to do what the Equalizer did.
Yes, that's true.
So it was needed. It was needed. And there's an Equalizer 2, by the way, and it was just as good.
I think, was there an Equalizer 3? I think there was an Equalizer 3.
I don't think it's come out yet, if there is one. If there is, somehow I missed it.
Now I have to look that up, because I think
I love me some Denzel.
I think the last one I watched, I was thinking, Denzel, now you too old.
No,
I like Denzel. Oh no, cut that.
Your truth.
No, Denzel, he is good. No, he's but he just, oh, I love me some Denzel. Uh, he just seemed like he was tired. His character seemed tired, you know, in the,
Well,
okay.
that's not his fault.
No, it's not.
Don't you be Denzel, if you're watching this, keep making those movies.
Yes, you do. Keep watching.
I need you to keep making those movies.
For those of us of a certain age, we all need you to keep making those movies so that we can believe that we can keep fighting a good fight.
Yeah. I mean, Tom Holland is adorable and all, but I need some Denzel.
Oh my goodness. I no longer know what this episode of this YouTube is about.
Okay, we're on. Oh my gosh. And you know what I should do? Because I'm the one that tells my husband what to cut for all of you people out there. I should just tell him there are no edits from this episode.
This is like a punishment episode.
If you can make it to the end of this episode, you can do anything.
Okay. So 38. Okay, let's go.
We're now on the third act, the negative arc. I think the thing I like about how she did this is that it's exactly the same. Like, you're not wondering, well, how is she going to go back and refer? She does. She goes back and refers how it's different from the positive, from the flat, the three different arcs within the negative arc. She gives you all the examples, uses a couple of other books to give you what she's talking about. And she also does point out the same that she said in the beginning, is that look back at the person your character was at the beginning of the book. And it's going to be different for each arc, because your flat arc, he's going to stay the same. Your positive arc, he's going to get better. Your negative arc, he's going to get worse. But you need to look back and see, how was he at the beginning of the book, so that you can make sure you're following along what promises you made at the beginning and what your readers are expecting at this point.
You know what I'd like to see sometime? And I bet there are some. I bet there are some like foreign films where this happens, like a negative arc character that just rides off into the sunset, just tossing a match over their shoulder.
Ooh.
And that might be kind of good, because I love how she starts this chapter with that quote from Shakespeare: "Woe, destruction, ruin, and decay. The worst is death, and death will have his day." If you have any doubt about how this negative arc is going to end, Shakespeare has said it. It's not going to get good. It's going to get worse. And this is going to end badly for everybody.
And she actually says, because we said you need to go back and look at the beginning, she says, you'll want to create a closing scene that drives home the character's final state, a clear contrast to how the story began.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good.
Nope.
And I think you also need to make sure that you make it so like different that your readers are going, oh my gosh.
Mm.
And that brings us to the end of this hot mess of a video.
Well, I want to end it with just a summary for just the three of all of the arcs. So the positive change arc is about redeeming self. The flat arc is about saving others. And the negative arc, these are all according to Ms. Weiland, is about destroying self and probably others as well. And she explains how to do all of that in parts 1, 2, and 3 of the creating character arcs. And so that ends part 3 of the book, and that ends part 2, video 2 of this series. And we'll come back with video 3. Do come back for video 3, where we're going to talk about part 4, which is chock full of goodness and the conclusion.
So be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Join our newsletter to get a free copy of Save the Cat. and we'll see you guys next week.